MJ7 NLK here, and welcome back to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, then I'd like to thank you, and if not, well, you know what to do. Today we'll be having a look at the President Harrison II, which is a new CB radio released by President in 2023. We'll be doing an unboxing, we'll be testing the standard power outputs, accessing the hidden factory services menu, and modifying the radio to see what it's capable of doing. So do stick around. But first we have some exciting news from President on a new radio that's about to be released. The eagerly awaited George II. The user manuals and material is already on their site. This is a big one. It's fully packed, absolutely fully loaded, and yes, it's a single sideband radio. So keep your eyes out, it'll be available soon. Let's get the disclaimer out of the way first. Modifying a radio is at your own risk. You will have legal obligations in your region with regards to radio transmissions, licensing and power outputs. You should always ensure that you are not causing a nuisance and, more importantly, not causing any radio interference or distress to others. Please do not break the law in your region. But before we get into the content, we have a quick message from this video's sponsor, PCB Way. PCB Way are makers of prototype PCBs of all kinds. They also offer services like PCB assembly, CNC machining, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication and injection moulding. Manufacturing times are exceptionally quick and delivery is super fast. I have used them on multiple occasions prior to working with them and recommend them highly. They get an NLK-Media thumbs up. Check out their website at pcbway.com for more information or follow the link in the description below. Well, here it is, the Harrison II. Let's take a look around the box. It supports 24 volt as well as the standard 12 volt. That will keep the truckers happy. Automatic squelch control and SWR meter, very standard affair. We have a new label here that's appeared, Scan Skip. We'll talk about that in a moment. And Vox. Looking at the side of the box, not a great deal to report here, apart from that all European norms are supported. This is a European radio. And looking at the back of the box, we can see that it's a very similar layout to the Bill 2, where they have started to list key features and appropriate buttons on the back. It's using a standard DNC 520 President up-down microphone. And we have a new label that's appeared here, which is referring to the long pressing of the up-down buttons, which will engage the scan mode. At the back of the radio, we have the standard SO239 antenna connector, and we have jacks for Vox, PA speaker, and external speaker. Unfortunately, it looks like it has a fixed power cable. I much prefer having a removable socket. Not a great deal else to report on the back of the box, so let's go ahead and open it up. So here we go. Let's take a look inside. We get the #1 CB President sticker. Nice. We get the user manual in 4 languages: English, Spanish, French and Polish, I believe, and Polish. And then we get the radio itself. Let's take this one out and we'll come back to that in a moment. Let's dig through the accessories. We do in fact get the DNC 520 standard up-down microphone. We get a clip or a bracket to hold the radio if shelf mounted, and the usual accessories package where we get the microphone clip and the spare fuse and nuts and bolts. So let's look at the radio itself. Nice to see that there is a rather chunky heatsink on the back, so maybe some options here for expandability. Let's run round. It is in fact a fixed cable, which I do not like. and then we have the front of the Harrison. So nice little unit actually. It's a bit chunky when you compare it to the Bill 2, but small when you compare it to something like the Richard. Let me just grab my Dick and I'll show you the difference. So a standard radio like the President Richard, I know him so well I call him Dick. That's a size comparison there between the two radios. So what I'm going to do next is, oh, I almost forgot. I should do the peel. I should do the peel if I can get it off. This is a rather unusual screen protector that they've put on here, but here we go. We're going to try and get this off. Very satisfying. Okay, let me get it set up and connected to a dummy load, and we'll have a look and see what it's all about. So let's have a look at the setup that we're using. The Harrison 2 is connected to my tap attenuator. That is so I can take a feed off. The tap attenuator is then connected to my old bird. The old bird is then connected to a dummy load. So we have a 10 watt slug loaded in the old bird, and on AM, oh no, let's switch, FM channel 20 midband, let's see what standard power we are getting from this radio. So that is just a hair over 4 watts, which is what I would expect. And we'll do it on FM UK as well. Exactly 4 watts. So that's what I would expect. We'll do an AM test and switch it to peak. So we're getting 4 watts for the carrier on AM. So that's the standard power test. That's the setup that we're using. I'm now going to reconfigure so that you can see the screen of the Harrison, and we'll run through some of the options. Now we're going to have a look at the menu system. President, just add more buttons to your radios. This is a real faff. So what you do to get into the menu system is you have to push the F key so that F is displayed on the screen. You then need to push and hold the F key to access the menus. You cycle through the menu options using the channel selector. When you find the option you want, you push the EMG button to access it, channel selector again to make changes to your selection, EMG to accept, and then F to get back out. That is really, really painful. So I'm not going to go through all of the options that are available. You can look in the manual, and that has everything listed in there. But what the manual does not have is how to access the factory services menu. Now, the factory services menu is a hidden menu that the factory uses to configure the radio. Getting into it is not simple, so let me run you through how it's done. You turn the radio off. The radio must be off. You push and hold the push to talk button, and you keep it held. You push the EMG and AM FM buttons together and then turn the radio on. When the radio turns on, it will display test mode in the bottom left hand corner. You then need to release all of the buttons you're holding, push EMG and then AM FM within 5 seconds to access the factory services menu. So let's go ahead and do that now. Push and hold PTT, hold EMG and AM FM at the same time, turn the radio on, release EMG AM FM, and that has now gone into the factory services menu. So pretty standard with the other factory services menus that we've looked at on the President radios. You use the up down button on the microphone to cycle between the options. So PL is power low. We have F2, which is the FM deviation adjustment, AL, which is the modulation adjustment for AM. You have, well, looks like R1, but it's not. It's S meter adjustment, and then the software version that the radio is running, which is 2.2 in this example. So back to PL. If you pull or push the PTT button and transmit, you'll see that we're outputting 4 watts at the moment, and we can use the channel selector to increase this option, and the highest we can go is 6D, which is about 4.3 watts in standard mode. And you turn the radio off and then back on again to exit your factory services menu. So now we're outputting about 4.3 watts in standard mode. So the next thing I'm going to do is take the radio apart and see what expandability options we have inside and see how far we can push the Harrison 2. So I was saying earlier in the video about how I don't like on the radios having a fixed power cable. Well, President have listened. They've added a handy dandy little connector here, and they've put the fuse at the other end, which is excellent. So I still prefer to have the socket, but this is a good alternative. So next we will open the radio up, and to do that you need to open it from the bottom because the speaker obviously goes into the cavity, so the bottom of the printed circuit board is going to be on the top half of the shell. So let's go ahead, undo the 4 screws and remove. Now I removed all 8 screws because I want to take the upper shell off as well, but you would only need for a standard modification to remove the 4 screws for this part of the cover. So let's go ahead and get the cover off. Now with the casings removed, you can see the usual expandability option here, which is a jumper, and you move this jumper forward 1 position, and the usual loop wire, which you just need to cut. But I think, looking at this particular board, that we may need to desolder this wire and move it back to the position directly behind it to enable the high power mode. So jumping the jumper and cutting the wire may well unlock the additional frequencies and provide some more headroom, but in order to get the high power mode, I think we're going to have to move this back to the position behind it. And rather unhelpfully, the holes are not clear, so we're going to have to use some braid to clear the holes in order to be able to move it backwards. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so what I had to do is I had to add on the other side of the board some leaded solder, which would make it easier to get it out, and I had to break out my desoldering gun to effectively remove that wire. The wire is now out. I'm going to keep that so that we can use that for the second position if required, and then I had to use some solder wick to just clean up the underside of the holes. So the holes are now clear. What I'm going to do is jump the jumper and turn the radio on and see if we have a high power mode, which I don't think we will, but we'll check. And then if we don't, I'll put the white wire into the second slot. So I'll set that up now. Okay, desoldered the wire. We've now got connected back up to the bird. Let's get into the factory services menu and see if we have any other options. So we've got power low and power 2. So we do get a second power mode with the wire being removed. So let's have a look and see. We're outputting about just over 5 watts at the moment. And then what expandability do we have on that? Okay, we can get up to about 6 watts on the second power mode in expanded with the wire cut. So that's good. The radio is showing that it's expanded. so that we have the additional channels. We'll also have alpha channels as well. So the next thing I'm going to try is soldering that wire into the second slot and see if that gives us more headroom or whether that is in fact required at all. Okay, the wire's been relocated and resoldered in, so let's hope for the best. Now obviously this could damage the radio, but we're hoping for no puffs of smoke. So let's turn it on and see what happens. Yep, everything's fine. It's on. Let's transmit. Oh my word. That is a huge power increase. Absolutely huge. Right, I'm going to have to swap the 10-watt slug and drop in a 25-watt slug to be able to read that. So 25-watt slug in. Let's do that again. Okay, we're putting out about 18 watts, which is pretty strong for this little radio. Okay, let's get back into the factory services menu and see what we've got going on in there. Okay, so power low. Power low is still at its maximum. Power 2, and we have a power 3. So power 2 we set to the maximum, which was 6 watts, and power 3 is currently set to 97, and in here it's outputting 10 watts, so let's just dial that up. So the maximum on power 3, 11 watts. So the maximum in power 3 mode in the factory services menu pushes it up to about 11 watts. But when the radio is not in factory services and the power adjustments have all been set, turning the radio on, channel 20 mid-band FM, we're up to about 17 watts, there or thereabouts, 17-18 watts. So let's have a look. I'll show you the finished result inside the radio, and we can put it back together. So that's the wire moved from the front position to the rear position, and the jumper in the expanded state, and now we're going to put the radio back together as the power modification is complete. So after making all of the changes and the tweaks to the services menu, this is the result that we get. FM mid-band, I'm going to call that 18 watts. 18 watts of power output. Let's switch to FM UK and see if there's any difference. 18 watts. And going over to AM, and the carrier is reading about 6 watts on the carrier. So there we have it. Power modification done to the Harrison 2, high power mode found and enabled, and those were the results. I hope you found the information in this video helpful. If you did, then please help the channel out by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. It really does help the channel and helps to ensure that I can continue to provide content. Please feel free to buy me a coffee, details are in the description below, and if you have any questions or comments then you know what to do. All I ask is that you keep it respectful. No nasty know-it-alls required. Until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and catch you in the next one, which hopefully will be the new George 2. Until next